Hey everyone, welcome to another Straight Up Startups. This is Tuesday, November 15th, 2016. Like always, I'm joined by my friend Nick Hughes. Nick, how you doing?
Hey Connor, I'm doing really well.
Good to hear from you. Well, we're actually going to have a short episode for everyone today. We've got about 5 topics. Nick and I have been a little busy, so we're kind of a little short today, and I know we're starting a little late. But we're going to save kind of the small talk for after. We're going to jump right into the topics. And the first one comes from, it seems like Medium is our top content provider at this point, just because there's so much diversity on here. But the first article came from Jeff Hayden, calls himself a ghostwriter, but he's contributed a ton for Inc. magazine, and he's a LinkedIn influencer. And he wrote an article about 9 buzzwords your startup shouldn't use. And you always hear every year there's an article about like, what are the hot buzzwords this year? And that's something that you and I, Nick, we always talk about. Like, you just get really tired of all the cliche buzzwords that go around. So, Nick, my question for you is either related to this article or something on your own. What's 1 or 2 buzzwords that just is, that you're over at this point?
I'm just over. I'm so over unicorn. I'm so over it, and I think the industry is coming around to being over it as well. But it's an annoying word. I think it's become the epitome of just kind of blind faith entrepreneurs, blind faith, founders that in their pitch deck, if they're the slide deck to the investors, if they're using the word unicorn, I think that one just shows a lack of tact, and as well, most likely investors are going to start to not take them very seriously. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't shoot for being a large company, possibly valued in the billions of dollars. There's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. But coining yourself a unicorn, it just smells wrong, and I think it illustrates that you are kind of a wannabe. You don't fully have confidence in your own ability as a company to grow naturally. If you have to say, oh, we're going to be this unicorn and worth billions of dollars, it tells me that founding team really doesn't know their foundation, that it's okay to naturally grow. And if you look at a lot of the companies that have come before this era, like Microsoft, do you think Bill Gates ever said we're going to be a unicorn?
No way.
Do you think Larry Page and Sergey said we're going to be a unicorn? No. And yet they had a vision of being a great business and a great technology and changing the world. And so, I think I'd just be happy to see that word leave. And I hope it's not replaced by an equally annoying word, but it tells me just uneducated and very shallow team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And everyone's getting deemed a unicorn, right? If one person gives you that $1 billion valuation, then everyone's a unicorn. And I mean, we have one big startup here that's valued just at $1 billion and doesn't generate any revenue. And it's like, oh, great. Like, it's all fiction though, right? That's what is the unique part about unicorn, is that they're not real. And maybe these companies aren't that real either. I mean, obviously Uber gets called a unicorn and that one's real, but a lot of them, aren't going to last in the long run, which is kind of sad. But for me, I want to review some of the ones he talks about, because I really like what he says, because it's more about like the adjectives to describe sales pitch or describe your company. Some of the ones he talks about using the word revolutionary, award-winning. Award-winning is pretty funny. He says, awesome, which awards? He's like, if you won a Webby, that's impressive, but the Folks Run Ladies Auxiliary Community Service Award doesn't mean so much. He also said the word innovative, which is thrown. Every single startup says they're innovative. Every single startup says they're leading, providing solutions and the next generation. But the one that I'm really tired of that's outside this list is the concept of being lean, right? The lean startup, because every startup is lean, right? There's no lean startup and not lean startup. And I know it's a mentality of trying to be efficient and I mean, spend as little money as you can. But can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. But just every startup should be lean. that should just be a concept when you start a business in general, that you need to save as much money as you can and you need to be frugal with how you're spending. So yeah, I'm just really tired of people. I mean, I hear it in one of my businesses all the time. It's like, we got to be lean. We got to be lean. And it's like, we are lean, right? Like there's no other option, or we're going to go out of business and we can't pay the employees if we're not lean. So yeah, I'm just getting tired of that one. But I know the methodology is really important. And it's a big concept that big companies need to start taking, or they are starting to take it more seriously. But with startups, like, you have to be lean. It's part of being a startup.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like terms, when these become buzzwords, it means they're empty. They're empty words. And, founders think it's actually a good idea to just be throwing them out in between other words, and when they're either talking to other founders or investors or whatnot, and they just lose their meaning. And, I think the lesson here, just don't say these words if you don't mean it. If you don't know what they mean, if they're filler words, just be smart and don't say it. And you're okay. You don't need to try to talk the lingo. Just talk. And, rather than talking the lingo, learn the right terms to describe your company accurately and with intelligence, and you're going to be fine. You don't need to play the game of, trying to say these dumb words that are overplayed, So, but, moving on to our next topic, Thrive Market has built a really interesting content machine. And this article is another Medium post, and they really go into depth on, it's actually a kind of an interview with the founder and CEO of Thrive Market. And I guess, Connor, take a little moment to describe this article and what you took from it, and what you think from the lessons that you took from the Thrive's content machine.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what Thrive Market is, it's an online marketplace for healthy foods. Kind of think like the online version of Whole Foods. And how it works is you pay a $60 a month subscription to get access to the food, but the food is not marked up as it is at Whole Foods. It's as close to break even as possible. So you pay this monthly subscription, and that's how the company makes their money. And then they provide all these healthy food alternatives to you at cost. And as of this article, they had 300,000 monthly subscriptions. It's just a ton of money. And they've taken a ton of different marketing tactics and growth hacking tactics to get their name out there. And it's been really impressive. And so the first one that I wanted to highlight here is they've kind of taken the concept of the TOMS model. And what they do is every person who gets the $60 a month subscription, they actually donate a free subscription to a low-income family, right? And since they sell the food at cost, that low-income family now has an opportunity to get cheap, healthy food for them and their kids, which has been part of their virality and becoming so famous, because there is that good cause of, I'm going to buy this membership, it's going to help me, but it's also going to help a needy family, which if you can ever have that tactic within your marketing plan, and you can afford the margin to provide the one-for-one, then it's a huge opportunity for you, because people are just wanting to get behind a good cause, which is great. The other one is they've tried a lot of different solutions. I know they do webinars, they do video conferences, they get content creators, and they work with social media influencers. And that's something that I want to kind of talk to other founders, because I know everyone's always struggling on what are the different ways to market my brand or my company. And you have to create content, right? You have to be doing something to get the word out there. And that really helps build your culture and defines you in the audience's eye, and it keeps you relevant. So what they say in this article is Gunnar Lovelace, the CEO, said it was really important for me not to be selling people on my content, but for the content to make me an authority within the marketplace. So when anyone was talking about healthy foods, it was like, oh, the best place to go is Thrive Market, because they have education on top of all the different product. So the education wasn't about selling. It was about being the best resource to go to drive all the traffic, which I think is really interesting. And what they did at the beginning is they actually found influencers who are already blogging about healthy foods and partnered with them. And that's how they helped raise funding. Instead of giving them money up front, they might have given them a little piece of equity in the company that gives them, that entices the influencer to continue to promote you because they're invested in the long term with the company. I thought that was genius. If you're a small startup and you're looking for ways to promote your content, you really need to know about who else is in your space that is a complement to you and is out there talking, already has subscribers and listeners, because creating a partnership with them, they're going to be one of your top customers and they can get the word out to a lot of other people. So the piece of advice that I'd pass on to founders watching us today is do a lot of research on who's already creating content within your industry and within your space, and partner with those people to do some type of collaboration so you can get their name out and they can get your name out. I think that's really going to help. And that's a really good bootstrapping marketing tactic that's going on.
Yeah, totally. Great points there. One thing that jumped out at me, he mentions in here, rejected by VCs, embraced by 6 million unique visitors. And they go on to say, basically, when they initially raised money, they were rejected by over 50 VC firms in LA, San Francisco, and New York. And yet they had 6 million unique users, clearly the hundreds of thousands of their subscribers. This was a money generated, like this is a revenue generating business, and yet rejected. And it turns out that they actually raised from strategic investors in the end that weren't necessarily VCs, venture capitalists that are more traditional. And the lesson to me is that I think founders can get way too wrapped up into the no's that they hear from random investors, whether they are angels, VCs, so traditional, like like the Sequoias or even Andreessen Horowitz or whoever, and they get all worked up. They lose faith, and they think that they're not gonna even grow a business or succeed because they're getting no's from these VCs. Yet they're getting 6 million unique, and it doesn't. I don't know if that's monthly users, but inevitably that's millions of people. And so that proves they've hit product market. It's just the investors said no for some reason. That's okay. And that tells me that, man, you're looking for, if you want to bring on investors and specifically venture capitalists, you're looking for ones that see your vision, and all the ones that say no, they simply don't see it. And that's okay. You go through those no's, but man, this is an incredibly successful company. Awesome brand, and they got no's initially. They never gave up. They figured out a way to fund it, and now they're continually growing. And it's and I think, man, just the more I was reading about this, just their strategy is spot on. They're unique, and sometimes that's different. And the investors are like, I don't know what to think about this. And so the no's are okay. You're looking for product market fit validation from the people that are paying you. That's what you're looking for as a founder.
Exactly. Yeah. And they had all these customers. You're totally right. And I think their approach to find influencers in a different way and give them equity in the company is really unique, right? It's like, well, if these guys aren't going to write us checks, we're just going to give equity for marketing. And I thought that was really, really interesting to get customers to just buy in a little bit more. And I think e-commerce companies, I mean, we talk about like the Dollar Shave Clubs, the Thrive Markets, these companies that are almost to $1 billion. I think a lot of investors wrote them off because of Amazon, right? I think now it's starting to turn a little bit like, oh, people aren't just going to Amazon to make purchases, right? Amazon is 4% of the internet, which is a whole lot, but there are so many other places that people want to go. And now that every market seems to get big, right? And then it becomes mainstream, and then everything starts to get niche, right? I mean, Founders Live, that's exactly what Founders Live is, right? Everyone's kind of tired of the Facebook and Twitter dynamic, so everyone wants to get more into niche where they're finding specific focused products. And Amazon's kind of created that, where now smaller companies can come in, be the experts within their product vertical, and dominate that and really get people going in. So yeah, Thrive Market is a great case study for anyone out there, especially looking to sell any product online and how they've influenced other people and got the word out there. But some more local news. Earlier this week, GeekWire came out, and it's their introduction of their Seattle 10. So I think this is the third or fourth year that they've done this competition, and it happens at Mohi here in Seattle with Jeff Bezos. And I know previously what they did was have all the companies pretty much draw their business plan on giant napkins and kind of have this concept that it got created on the napkin. And so the 10 came out. And Nick, I wanted to know, is there one here that you either had your eye on before they made it this big, or that you think, is somewhere that any prospective employee should be applying to, or investors should be looking at, or just people we should keep our eyes on it?
Yeah, the one that jumped out at me, and this is maybe a year ago or 6 months ago, was Convoy. And I think that dude, I'll tell you right now, maybe the next unicorn coming out of Seattle. No, look, we're talking about transportation. So Convoy, real quick, basically really connects, it's in the trucking and transportation industry, and it connects drivers to, essentially jobs. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
Yeah,
it's kind of the full pipeline of connecting either drivers with trucks to things that need to be shipped or vice versa.
Right. And by the way, huge industry. We're talking about $800 billion, if I read that correctly. I haven't done market research in it, but we're talking about a massive industry that, look at all the interstates around the country every single day, and there is just so many trucks. So shipping, the whole entire industry of trucking, shipping, basically it could go even into the expediters. What that means is any imports coming into our country, they then hit the ports, they then are put on trucks, and they're shipped to, other parts of the country. And that entire industry is massive, and it needs the influence, or the here's another buzzword, the disruption using technology is going to be huge. And there's hundreds of billions of dollars up for grabs to help transition that industry into the 21st century. Clearly there has been some transition, but there's a lot more to be done. And I think Convoy sits in that. And there is most likely going to be one company that is the center. Let's use Slack. I think Slack is a good example. If there's going to be a company in the trucking and transportation industry, shipping industry, that's the Slack, is maybe the glue or the communication hub, the information hub.
Yes.
And they're looking pretty good. And so their team is actually pretty deep. They have talent from some major companies in the industry, in actually the tech industry. And so I'm pretty long on them. And if you look at that list, they're the one that stands out. That's like, wow, they're going to do something big.
I agree. They were my number one company too. After this election last week, which when we were doing the show last week, did not know that was going to happen at all. It was so interesting that we did the show, and I turned the TV on and it was over. But after the election, there was a lot of research done on what are all the jobs here in middle America. Number one job, truck driver, especially within all those red states. In the country right now, just driver in general is the number one job because of Uber. It's a great transition job to have. But right now it's trucking. So yeah, they're in a spot that, especially if they're the incumbent and they're the big player in there's no one that's going to take them down. It really comes down to, can they get big enough to stand alone, or does someone like Amazon purchase them, or whoever ends up being, the big efficient person, whether it's Amazon, UPS, USPS, Uber, however ends up unfolding. Yeah, like you said, they're going to be the glue that connects all of these moving pieces. And as they get international, right, there's just so much technology that's involved there. And what I think that isn't going to affect them is the automation of all these trucking companies, right? Because in 4 or 5 years, the semi trucks are going to be automated because they're the number one thing being driven. But they actually have the layer that's still going to connect the suppliers to the cars. And so I think they're in a great spot. Two other ones, I have a personal bias for my significant other. She works at Outreach. Shout out to them. They're going to do really big things. They make a lot of money. They're a real business. They're going nowhere but up. Totally look out for them if you're looking. I know they're hiring. But the other one that I think is kind of a dark horse in here is Auth0, or maybe it's Auth0. I think it's but everyone's building these technologies, and there's always some sign-in, some login, some concept of identity in all these different platforms. And they are making that very efficient, very simple. And what it is, it's just a few simple lines of code that you can insert into your code base, and it just simplifies the authorization and the security of having all these different users and kind of profiles. And I think that is if someone can really lock that down, the security with passwords and login and authentication is so important with the internet in the future and where it's going. I really think they're kind of one of those dark horses that, they're not the sexy company whatsoever, but it's used in so many different web platforms. And if they are the most efficient one, it's not really a piece of code that there's going to be competition. It's so simple that if they are the winners, they're going to lock it in. And unless they get bought, but if they can just license that out, I think they're going to do really well.
Nice. Hey, speaking of sexy, next topic. What did you think about the Snap Spectacles rollout?
I am on the train for sure. I am on the bandwagon about how they're doing this. They have certainly learned from all these other hardware launches. And what is the most genius part about this Spectacles launch is they're doing it slowly. Right? So they're just building the hype. And what they're doing is they have a splash page on Snapchat.com right now, and they have a countdown clock about where this new vending machine is going to go. Right? And the vending machine pops up, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of people in line. And it's just absolutely genius for them to do it this way, make it slow. There's obviously all the reports that the product's not great, but it's only $130. That is not a lot of money when it comes to technology nowadays, and they look pretty good. So I've been really impressed. Like, I'm definitely on the bandwagon. They are sticking it to Google really hard because they're just doing something simple, right? And there is that creepiness factor that the Google glasses have, but I think the way that they've unleashed it and it's coming out slowly, and there isn't all this other technology, I think they're doing it right. Like, if one launches here in Seattle, like, I'm gonna go get in line and try to get one for sure. There's no doubt I would not be trying to, or I would be trying to buy one. I just think it's very impressive by Snapchat. They constantly blow me away on how they've evolved and how they've grown. And, they took a $3 billion check and he turned it down, and he's making it worth it for sure. It's been a very impressive rise for that company. And now they got IPO talks. The IPO's in the works.
Yeah. I'm constantly impressed too. I think it's, they're pushing the envelope on a few different directions, but you're right. They're being very smart. Well, first of all, they're thanking Google every day for paving the way with quite a few mistakes. And they're just like, oh, okay, we're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to do the opposite of that. And, yep. First and foremost, just basically making sure that it is somewhat cool looking, that it's affordable. And then the rollout, creating this, in terms of marketing, you're creating a demand and you're creating a need, a want, and then curiosity of where the next one is going to end up. Dude, that is totally genius. And so not only are they creating this pent up demand, but they're also slowly rolling it out to keep things under control. And being able to, they release one location and they have one machine there, so then it's like the next location, they're basically really holding the supply very tightly. And so only a certain amount of devices, spectacles are in the market. And if anything goes wrong in the next 6 months, a year, they'll be able to control it in quite a bit of a better or more they can more easily handle some of these issues that are coming about. And I think, when you look at Google versus Snapchat, there's just a youth and energy and a coolness factor that it looks like Snapchat has in their DNA, that they're now going to go into a wearable that has a camera, but do it in a way that in the end, if anyone has not, if if anyone's going to attempt to make this wearable glasses recording device cool, it's probably going to be Snapchat. I don't see Facebook actually doing it. I don't clearly Google had a problem, and Apple's the kind of wild card here, but
Yeah.
it also isn't. It's going to be interesting to see, and I think they do try on it, but it'll be interesting to see. They just don't have the trend making DNA that Snapchat has, and so yeah, I think that they're being very, very smart on how they go about this, and I'm really curious to see how it works.
Yeah, you made a good point on the inventory too, right? They're really trying to see, like, they're not going to waste $1 billion on making 100 million devices, and if it flops, then they're crushed. I mean, I'm sure they've already produced a ton of the devices, but those vending machines can't be cheap, right? Those are custom vending machines that they look like minions. Really, they're like minion vending machines with the eye and everything. So I think they're just being very smart about how they're spending, because if they launch the vending machine and it's there for a day, once it's out, the truck picks it up and they take it to the next location, right? So I can't imagine, I mean, I don't know what kind of rollout they have planned, but they're not building hundreds of machines that are sitting in warehouses ready for deployment. They're going to be very smart about how they deploy it. But yeah, I cannot wait to get one here. I think it's going to be bananas when they launch it. And I'm definitely going to try to get one, unless, they start blowing up on airplanes, like some other hardware products that we have. But yeah, so moving on to the last topic here. It's kind of a more serious one that we've talked about, and I'm hoping that we have a little bit of disagreement here. But after this election, there's been so much talk about the spread of false information online. And that's not anything that we're shocked about or surprised. It's the internet. The phrase "don't believe everything you see on the internet" has been around for a very long time, internet-wise. And so a lot of people are calling out Facebook and Google, and both companies are kind of going different directions about how they are trying to either get rid or not get rid of false information on their individual platforms. And so my question to you, Nick, or I guess to quote the article, is one from CNET, but you can pretty much find this topic everywhere. Is, does the internet have a fake news problem? And my question to you was, does Facebook and Google have a moral obligation to actually censor their content and be taking down news that they believe is fake?
That's a really tough one, and I think the key word you just said is that they believe is fake, and there is such a blurry line or an absolute huge space that I think intelligently these companies up to this point are not in. They're not in this space, which is them speaking from the company, they really think, is it really our moral obligation to determine what is the information that user should actually be seeing and clicking on, and what is actually disinformation or fake? And I think inevitably they started with a pretty naive belief that this wouldn't be a problem, and it has become a problem clearly from. By the way, the root of this is advertising dollars. That's how the internet works. It's clickbait. Someone's making money. They realize it spreads quickly through these social platforms. And now you have these companies looking at it and saying, well, shit, if we actually police this, it will hurt our bottom line. But yet the flop side is, to go there, it's arguable that these two companies, actually, if you involve Twitter, it's arguable that they were part of the reason why this president was voted into the office. And if there wasn't a Facebook, a Twitter, and I think Google's out of this conversation just from the search engine aspect, but when you look at the social and the virality and the hot topic or emotional response from people, that's how Trump reached the millions and millions of people. And that's how there was influence. And a lot of these informational articles or whatnot could have possibly been fake or fabricated. And yet it implanted certain things into these people's minds that resulted in a incredibly crazy presidential run and now a new president that we have no idea what's going to happen. So in the end, I'm just kind of working through. I think Facebook. So my honest opinion is they like, I think Mark is fooling himself. They are a media company. He needs to take steps to figure out this problem. I don't have the answer, but I think that they, as a media company, have an obligation and understand that they are greatly influencing all their users' minds. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of hearing them talk. Hey, Cheryl and him like didn't come out at all about the election. And I understand that between the people who voted, which was only 50%, if they went one way or the other, they're going to piss off 25% of their constituents. So that's a really tough situation to be in. And I understand the put your head in the sand concept and just ignore it until it passes and then we can move on. But I was really disappointed that there weren't more influential people who came out and took a stance. You know, even if you didn't take a stance, you just said vote, right? And I think Zuckerberg really was like, oh, but my platform told you to vote. That's very different when it's on the top of your timeline and we ignore it like a banner ad versus having someone as influential as Mark Zuckerberg coming out and saying how important these things are. But it makes me think that when they launched their newspaper and then they got rid of it, how would that have played out if that was still around, right? If Facebook had an aggregated like front page news, you know, would it just been the most shared content? Would it be the opinions of their staff? It's a really tough opinion, and I have my most trouble with this is that isn't their job, right? Like that. I don't know if Mark really created Facebook to be this influential, right? And originally it was just like, I just want to send like a text message of the food that I'm eating, right? Or like where the party's at. Nothing. I mean, obviously he's been preparing for it now, but I bet when he was college, he was never like, I'm going to get Donald Trump elected, or Donald Trump's going to be significantly influenced by my product and become president. There's no way in the early 2000s that he would have ever thought that, because back then Trump was still famous.
Yeah.
And so I just have this problem with like, I don't think that's Facebook's job to censor. That's something that's going to be really hard if they, even though they already do it, which is unfortunate, which I think they should maybe, in the case of my argument, they should tone it back. Like I have read that they censor a lot of women's rights issues because of it being too graphic. I mean, whether it's dealing with abortions or like periods or like really feminine things, they censor those things online. But they won't censor the false information. So it's kind of like, how do you do one, but you don't do the other? So I think they should actually take a step back and say, like, we're just going to let it all fly. The internet's the Wild West. And it should be up to you as the consumer to do the proper research, right? And maybe what they do is they promote a company and say, you might not, right? People are going to say whatever they want up here. You can lie out of your mouth. You can lie online. But, you know, take this link, send it through this website, and we'll tell you if it's real or not. I think that kind of has a good opportunity. I think if people knew that there was a place to go see if this information was right or wrong, I would hope that more people would do it than not. But I mean, we consume so quickly now that all we do is read a headline and we make snap judgments and we move on. And that forms our opinion.
And that's, I think, the kind of fundamental aspect of this issue is that's just the quote virality and how things can move so quickly. And yeah, we're reading the headline and, you know, like it. Well, when you like that on Facebook, you're propagating.
Yeah.
Without even, you didn't even click and read the article, you're propagating it. And that's the issue. And so actually part of the problem here is technical. It's the way that Facebook has built their platform has allowed for sharing without fully knowing. Mm-hmm. And the moment you share without fully knowing, and the way that people propagate and like and then repost, shit just gets out of control in terms of the way that this message is spread. And I look, you know, am I blaming Facebook for this result? Not necessarily. But I think, you know, kind of moving or switching or shifting gears a little bit. It really just, this whole experience like really helped me understand, and I've posted this on Founders Live, that whoa, we do live in a bubble, and I didn't realize how much of a bubble that we here in Seattle and on the West Coast and maybe in the political and or the industry that we work in and we live in, that we don't maybe fully understand or see the perspective of people that maybe live in a different part of our country, which is the Midwest, that they are feeling disenfranchised, they're feeling left behind, and there's hatred enough to actually vote someone like Trump into office. And that was the biggest thing for me, was holy crap, I'm not fully understanding where they're coming from. At the same time, they're not fully seeing what we see. And a lot of it's the echo chamber of social media, and you surround yourself online digitally with people that you're similar with. So the whole thing feeds on itself. Virality takes place. That's where these things come from.
Yeah, and who could be the biggest winner from this is the legitimate news companies that do actual reporting. Right? The company or the newspapers or blogs, whoever it is that actually go out and do the research, get factual information, and put that out there for the public, they have a huge opportunity right now. I don't know really how they're going to take advantage of it, but they really, especially since this is such a hot topic on where you get the right news from, it's a big opportunity for, you know, for them to up their subscriptions, right? Like, don't go on Facebook to get all your news. You should subscribe to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or wherever it is that you choose to get your information. There are other entities out there that you know, pride themselves on having the right information. Obviously, it's going to be slanted a little bit, especially if you get into opinions. But it could be an opportunity for those companies really to get a few more subscriptions and keep their user base that they just seem to be losing every single year.
Well, yeah, let's put it this way. It's going to be interesting to see, of course, the result and how this transition happens with the new president. But actually, it'll be interesting to see the response of the world. And, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm intrigued. I'm not incredibly fearful, but it's going to be interesting to see, like, yeah, do other companies take advantage or shift, and actually they're better off because, you know, there might be the pendulum switches back to the traditional media companies that are a little more honest and have a more entrenched system that is clearly like not as, or is more guarded for the truth, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out.
Yeah, you know, America, I think we pride ourselves on, as a unit and as a group, pulling ourselves out of these problems. It doesn't matter if it's the Great Depression or the Great Recession that we just had, or, you know, the housing market crash. Whatever it is, Americans always come together in the end. And in the times of struggle, that's when we bond together and we bring each other up. And so, you know, at worst case, this is an opportunity for everyone to come together and survive through the times, good or bad, and make it through and come out the end. And hopefully we learn something for the better. And we make decisions based off what we learned.
Totally agree.
Awesome. Well, Nick, I know this is the end of our talk today. You got any news that you want to update our listeners on?
If you're in Seattle and you are, you know, so we actually have Startup Week happening this week in Seattle. So there's just a ton of events. Feature Friday is this Friday. Really cool. Four companies that are going to present. It's going to be packed. Like the numbers are actually a little scary at this point, from what I can see. But there's usually some fall off based on it's Friday night. People end up choosing to go other places. But Feature Friday is going to be great. And I will just say, anyone else around the country, if you want the really cool event, it's called Feature Friday. It might be called something else if it reaches your city. Reach out to me. It's going to spread to your area sometime soon.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. And on top of that, Founders Live will start to morph a little bit towards a lot of the content and the companies and the activity that happens in those cities. And so, yeah, I mean, we've said from the beginning, Founders Live is a really cool experiment. It's morphing, it's changing. and it's really just a great place for entrepreneurs. So we hope to start opening other cities to this feeder event, if you will, every month. 5 companies are celebrated, and they will win some things, and then that feeds into the Founders Live platform, and we'll start learning and finding out and discovering a lot of really cool companies coming out of interesting corners of the country.
Yeah, and on Founders Live, it's a great place to get feedback. If you have any questions, whether it's your new logo, or you have a new email campaign or marketing or development, great place to go put those questions on there. And I know people will always get back to you and find the answers. I know it's a startup week here in Seattle. You got any plans to attend any more events before your event on Friday?
Yeah, I have a handful. It's actually a busy week for me, so I'm not hitting the events during the day. There's a lot of talks, and I think that they're great for people that might be a little earlier in their founder's journey, and that's great. That's why they do this week. But I'll be hitting a few of them, very few, but Friday's gonna be a pretty big deal. So real excited.
Awesome. Yeah, wish you luck. Well, I'm Connor. You can follow me on Snapchat at Find Me in Seattle. Snapchat is definitely where I'm putting all my energy into right now. Hardest question that most people have every day is, where are we going to eat today? Right? Whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you want to find new places to eat, new places to shop in Seattle. Follow me on Find Me in Seattle on Snapchat. Got all the other things coming out, but that's the best place to get my information right now. Thank you very much, Nick. This is Straight Up Startups on Founders Live, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Peace.